Hey everyone, welcome back to bageltcg. Today we're going to be doing an Oldhim deck tech, and we're joined by my teammate Joe. Say hi, Joe.
Hi, Joe.
Joe is my teammate from Shaky Leaf. We are my team in Jacksonville, and we practice pretty regularly. I'll try to pick up different heroes, and Joe has definitely been on Oldhim the most and the longest, so I thought I would have him join me here. Joe, what got you on Oldhim to start?
So when he was first being spoiled around Terrals of Varia, I saw cards like Endless Winter. I saw his Hammer Winter's Wail. I think, and also cards like Channeling Frigid and Blizzard, and I saw those and like those seemed like incredibly strong and oppressive, disruptive tools.
Yeah, that makes sense. And now you're finally free from Prism, so now
Yes.
you can actually play your game. And obviously, we can see Oldhim has really blown up this national season with Prism hitting Living Legend. For example, French Nationals, It was an Oldhim mirror in the finals. Australian Nationals, we're looking at right here the winning list from Nick Butcher, who's one of the best players in the world. Probably one of the biggest Oldhim players in the world. Him and Hamilton, right, are probably the two biggest Oldhim players. So I'm sure they're happy that Prism's gone. And today we're just going to be doing kind of a deck tech, looking at this list from Nick Butcher. And then we're also going to do a bit of a deep dive and look at what options you have, and kind of compare and contrast some of the other lists from national champions here. But let's start with this list here. So talk to me about kind of the bread and butter, the base of every Oldhim deck, like the element cards, the blue attacks. What are we looking for in every Oldhim deck? What are we going to see in all of these lists?
Okay, so if you've played a lot of Bravo, Bravo likes to have a lot of a lot of blue cards, a lot of big attacks, and a lot of 3 blocks. So that core is kind of does stay when you move over to Oldhim. Like you still have your bread and butter stuff like Cranial Crush, Disable Glacial Footsteps, Macho Grande. These are all kind of important for Guardian. Because Guardian has a lot of very high cost cards. But what makes Oldhim unique is his access to Ice and Earth. And what you're mostly looking for in Oldhim, like his biggest strength is by far his access to the Ice talent. So if you scroll up to his weapon, Winter's Wail, it kind of makes the deck work. So for 3 pitch, you can attack for 4. If you put an ice card in your pitch zone, give a frostbite. It's great for a weapon already, but as a control deck, taxing your opponent by 1, like most decks just like can't deal with that. I'm sorry.
It's not that common for heroes to have an on hit on their weapon, anyways, right? So having an on hit is already pretty good, and on a break point is even better, right? Like I can't think of many other weapons that have an on hit that is disruptive at all, or even on hits in general that often. And this one is not only a disruptive on hit, but it's on a break point of 4, so it's really just hard for aggro decks to efficiently block without using equipment or just having to take it and have to pay that extra cost there. So definitely a grindy weapon that really is going to get damage in and is almost guaranteed to hit pretty consistently throughout the game, right? You're not gonna see them blocking it every time unless you're in a drastically different matchup, like a Guardian Mirror. But in that case, you're not playing it anyways, right? But against aggro decks, it's going to get through.
Yeah, it's either not going to get blocked or it's getting 2 cards out of their hand, and you're pretty okay with either scenario.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so we do have these core. We have these big blue attacks like Thunderquake, like Glacial Footsteps, Disable, Macho Grande, Cranial Crush. A lot of them are either 6 for 8s or 5 for 7s, 7 for 8s for Macho Grande. And then we also have the package of Ice and Earth here. We have the Earth like Autumn's Touch, and we have the Ice like Channeling Frigid, Hypothermia. And we can see here the Earth package actually tends to differ a lot between the different decks, right? So we can see Nick Butcher only brought 5 Earth cards, not counting Pulse, which is an Ice and an Earth card. He brought 3 Autumn's Touch and 2 Sodomaro. But we can see other decks, like, for example, the Norway national champion third place deck brought 3 yellow Autumn's Touch also, and no Sodamaro. So 6, or actually no, 2 Sodamaro here. So he brought 8 total, up from 5. This list had 2 yellow Earthlore Surge with a 3 yellow Autumn's Touch. This list, the French Nationals winning list, had 2, so the similar 5 Earth package here. So you can see very different. Some people bringing some number of yellow Autumn's Touch, some number of Sodamaro, all obviously bringing the standard 3 blue Autumn's Touch. But talk to me about the differences between picking up the yellow Autumn's Touch or the blue Sodamaro. Like, why would you want to do one over the other?
So the Earth slots are just very, very flexible. So it kind of can differ in playstyle, or it can also make up for deck deficiencies in some way. So Autumn's Touch blocks for 3. So that's kind of a no-brainer. The main reason you have a certain number of Earth cards really is to fuse Oakenold. Like, that's like your big thing you're thinking of in your head is like, I need a certain amount of Earth cards in my deck, period, in order to fuse Oakenold regularly.
And would you say that the decreased number of Earth cards in Butcher's list maybe means he's relying less on Oakenold, right? He's maybe a little higher on just hitting them with big red attacks. You can see we have red Glacial Footsteps here. We have red Thunderquake here as well. Do you think maybe he's trying to lean a little less on doing Oakenold, considering he only has 5 Earth cards here? And I mean 6, I guess, with Pulse, so only 6 Earth cards. Not going to hit it that often first cycle.
Yeah, I think he's not trying to hedge towards it first cycle, which you usually don't. It's a little greedy too. You can. But yeah, I think Nick is mostly trying to set up second cycle Oakenold, which is how you are normally going to get the card off anyway. You can. This is probably one of the strongest things you can do with the Oldhim deck is to chain cycle Oakenolds. So you can set up Oakenold after Oakenold after Oakenold 3 turns in a row, and there's not many decks that can beat that. So that you can just kind of wombo combo Oakenold. So you don't need that many. You don't need like that much Earth to make that happen. So I can understand why Nick would cut. I think he's 1 less Earth average. I think the average amount of Earth is 7, including the Pulse of Eisenloft.
Yeah, and Pulse does a lot of work here too, right? Because it's one of the most common pitch stack with Oakenolds to make it so you just need to fuse Pulse of Eisenloft with Oakenold, right? So it's just any blue plus Pulse plus Oakenold for that really consistent. And then you can hold it for the multiple Oakenolds in a row, right? So that's one of the easiest ways to make that pitch stack happen, is just like hold my Pulse of Eisenloft, slam you with 3 Oakenolds in a row that I pitch stacked. Really close out the game, right? Not many people can deal with 9 dominate, discard 2, or a bottom 2, I guess, for 3 turns in a row, right? Or somewhat 3 turns in a row. And first cycle, so that's more second cycle, right? It's going to be uncommon to naturally hit Oakenold first cycle. Maybe you'll get one of them, but very uncommon to hit all of them first cycle. So what are we looking for first cycle? I see we have a lot of red 6-for-8s. Nick Butcher here is playing 3 red Glacial Footsteps, which is the 6-for-10, and if you Ice Fuse it, has Dominate. He's also playing 2 red Thunderquake, which is the 6-for-10 that has Heave 3, and then we're playing 3 red Pummel. We're playing, I actually don't know if he's playing any number of blue Pummel. I don't see any blue Pummel here, but he is playing 3 Terra Sunder, and some other decent red attacks like Command and Conquer. So are we trying to come in with these big red attacks for a cycle, or are we fairly defensive, just blocking out and wailing? Or is that matchup dependent there?
That's matchup dependent and also slightly build dependent. So like the attacks that you kind of want to play as you see are ones that completely obliterate tempo. Those can be things like Command and Conquer, especially Command and Conquer paired with Red Pummel. At stuff like Spinal Crush will obliterate tempo. And sometimes you can do stuff with Terra Sunder as well, to just like completely destroy your opponent's tempo if you pair that with one of the 10 attacks as well, like 11 Dominate, discard 2 cards.
Yeah, and so Terra Sunder in this list, I think that's one of the reasons he's really liking these 6-for-10s, is it quite literally builds your own command, your own Crippling Crush, right?
Yep.
With the 6, you pitch a blue for Terra Sunder and then 2 blues for the 6-for-10. And then it's literally just Crippling Crush, 11 Dominate, discard 2, which is the same effect. And almost, it's a little more expensive than Crippling Crush for Bravo. It costs one more card, right? Usually Bravo can pitch 3 blues and do Crippling Crush Dominate. This is pitching, an extra card here. Or sorry, not pitching an extra card. It's actually using an extra card with Terra Sunder.
Yeah,
but
it's not Crippling Crush, but it's a close enough facsimile. We'll take it.
It's pretty good, right? And it's in a deck that is kind of lacking in the disruption a little bit compared to Bravo, right? Not having that on-demand Crippling Crush and on-demand Dominate. This is giving us that.
I would say lacking in disruption in a way that punches through damage as well. I think the main weakness, if you're looking at Bravo versus Oldhim, I think the strength that Bravo has over Oldhim is punching through damage along with his disruption. Because of the on-demand Dominate really allows those crush cards to really shine, get maximum value. Oldhim doesn't have access to that hero ability. So cards like Spinal Crush, most of the red crush cards are going to have just less efficacy in general.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But I think Oldhim does make up for it though in some of his other disruptive cards.
Yeah, that makes sense. So let's talk a bit about some of the different packages we see here. So I think we've talked a lot about the standard stuff that we're going to see. We're going to see these big blue attacks. We're going to see Ice and Earth. And you have a bit of options in the Ice and Earth. You can go Sotomaro or you can go Yellow Autumn's Touch. There's a bit of differences when it comes to ice cards. Some people are on more Blizzards or Hypothermias. Yeah. But overall, the packages are fairly consistent. Similar cards, big blue attacks, Ice and Earth, and some big red attacks, so like Spinal and Oakenold.
The biggest difference I've noticed is actually in the Earth cards. People can't seem to agree on an Earth package. You could go, as far as I can tell, you can play Blue Autumn's Touch is standard. Everyone's on that card. You can play Yellow Autumn's Touch if you just value the 3 block and an extra break and an extra Phantasm break for Dromai. You can play Sotomaro if you want to hedge for the mirror, which I like doing. And Yellow Earthlore Surge. That's interesting tech. Yellow or Blue Earthlore Surge, but Yellow Earthlore Surge I think is becoming more in vogue.
I think we saw it in this list here that got first at the Slovenia Nationals.
Yeah, so the reason why you'll see like these yellow Earth cards instead of maybe like the red versions is that the yellow versions are pretty cute and they allow you to activate Oldhim's ability. So Oldhim's ability says that when you pitch an Earth, if an Earth card was pitched this way, prevent the next 2 damage. If an Ice card was pitched this way, put a Ice card from hand on top of the deck. If you pitch a yellow Earth card and a blue Ice card, say you overpitch that way, you can get both effects. So I think that's a reason why you'll see more. You won't see red Earth cards. You'll see yellow instead. So you can get that sort of cool value. It doesn't come up all the time, but it is really cool when it does come up.
Yeah, and it can make the deck a little punchier. I can see, for example, in this deck, it's running all blue and red Choke Slams, and with 2 blues, you can make it pretty big with the yellow Earthlore Surge on a Choke Slam. Whereas Nick Butcher actually isn't playing any Choke Slams, it doesn't look like. So let's talk about that a little bit here. What do you think about Chokeslam in the meta, and what is the reason to run it / not run it?
I think it depends on what you're looking to target. Chokeslam is very strong into Briar. It's fine into Viscerai. It's pretty good into Fi. That's about it. It's not really. It's not amazing in the mirror. If you're hedging towards Icelander, if you're trying to beat Icelander Dromai Dash, it's really 6 for 8's not. I mean, 4 for 8 is a good rate for damage, right? But like they can just kind of block it with 3 cards and not really worry too much about it. So
yeah,
Chokeslam is a fine disruptive card, but if you're not worried about this matchups where it's relevant in, maybe you can find room to cut it, or maybe you just want to target those decks very hard because you think there's going to be a lot of them. Specifically, Briar, I think, is the main reason to run Chokeslam.
Yeah, and I think I'm actually going to recommend. I'm gonna join Butcher's camp here, and I think you're probably in the same camp where the deck already has a good matchup into the aggro decks, right? It's kind of Oldhim's thing is beating these aggro decks. And I think you don't need to use these extra slots. Like, I don't think you need the Chokeslam slots to beat the aggro decks. You're already going to beat the aggro decks most of the time, and it's a little overkill using deck slots where we could use those for something like these Thunderquakes that help the mirror match a lot more that you're going to be seeing, right? So these big attacks are a lot better against the field that we're expecting compared to Chokeslam, which is for a matchup that we're already expecting to do pretty good into, right? So I
will say there's not like no cost to it, right? When you take out disruptive cards like Chokeslam to put in something like Thunderquake, you are still reducing your percentage points into that matchup, right? So like you're giving yourself like, there's no unlosable matchups for you outside of like maybe Katsu. Any deck can beat you if you're not careful enough. And you have to consider that cost.
That makes sense. And some other cards that we see. So we're seeing Erase Face in quite a few of these. And we also are seeing, let's see, some interesting other cards is Biting Gales in a few of these. And then some decks like Butcher are running, we got Pulverize. We've also got Zealous Belting and Rouse in Butcher's deck, while other decks we might have something like E-Strike. I think I saw in one of these decks. E-Strike in here along with Red Crush the week 2. So there's a lot of options, and they're all in the red cards, right? There's a lot of red card options. I feel like the blue package is fairly consistent. You can see some different numbers, like Butcher had 1 Blizzard, 3 Hypothermia, compared to some other lists like this one that has 2 Hypothermia, 2 Blizzard. So, I mean, you can move the Ice and Earth around a little, but I would say that doesn't impact the deck performance too drastically compared to your red cards, your power cards, right? The red cards in any Guardian deck are what you're trying. They're kind of what you change when you want to target something, right? You're going to be able to hit different decks. If you're switching from Cranial Crush Blue to Thunderquake Blue, your deck is changing in percentage point, probably 0, right? It does almost the same thing. They're both 6 for 8s with slightly different effects, but changing from Erase Face to Command and Conquer can really swing some different matchups, right? These are all on Command and Conquer, but that's just an example. So talk to me about some of these different cards, any order you want. Like, why would you play stuff like, Pulverize or Erase Face or any of these Go Again cards, Biting Gale, stuff like that? These very different options in the red card pool. Just talk about why you would play each of these different options and what do you think is where we should be right now for Oldhim?
Where do you think we should be is going to be a much more complicated question to answer, but I can start to talk about sort of the cards one by one. So I think we can start with the simple ones: Glacial Footsteps and Thunderquake. I think we can talk at the same time.
Yeah.
These are 6 for 10s. They have some extra effects. Thunderquake can be really cute if you heave it. Allows you to make some cooler plays with like Pummel or Terra Sunder a little bit easier. But mostly it's there as a 6 for 10, and Glacial Footsteps is mostly a 6 for 10 that you can dominate. These are aggro cards. These are cards you play because you want to push damage, and matchups where you'd want to push damage are the Mirror against decks that set up a board state. So stuff like Dash and Dromai and Icelander. Because if you don't push enough damage against them, they can start to overwhelm you. So like Icelander on 3 Frost X's, Dromai with a bunch of dragons, and Dash with all of her items, obviously. So you're kind of starting to hedge into those matchups with those non-disruptive, big damage number cards. Let's see.
We've got the Go Again cards and the Erase Face,
Yeah, Erase Face is, I think it started as tech for Fi, and I think Chokeslam did as well, because it stops the Draconic talent, and Fi, most Fi builds were relying pretty heavily on the Draconic talent. I think it's still reasonably strong, especially if you expect to see a reasonable amount of Viscerai. Stopping the Runeblade talent to stop their Mothrain Skies turns is really impactful in that matchup. But maybe if Briar is the most in vogue meta deck, and you don't see a lot of anything else really, maybe you can start to cut Erase Face, or maybe you're not worried about any matchup but Briar, and so you could just cut Erase Face. Chokeslam, I talked about Chokeslam.
Yeah.
I think it's like only really strong, like really very strong against Briar, and like it's fine into Fi and Viscerai. I think it's pretty easily cuttable. I've been pretty low on that card recently. Still a fine card though. I wouldn't be embarrassed to run it. Scroll down. There are basically 3 red attacks that you'll never ever cut in your life because they're amazing. Command and Conquer, Oakenold, and Spinal Crush.
Yeah.
So Oakenold is like we talked about fusing that card. That card's like the single strongest card you can resolve in the deck. You'll never cut it. It's like the reason. It's a big reason to play Oldhim. Spinal Crush is just strong into basically everything. Every single aggro deck cares about Go Again. Even in matchups that don't really care about Go Again, it attacks for a big enough number. Guardian staple. I don't think there'll ever be a Guardian deck that doesn't want to run Spinal Crush. Pretty self-explanatory. Command and Conquer. You're a Guardian, so people like to run defense reactions against you. So, this is like punishing you for having defense reactions. It's pretty great. Pairing it with Pummel is basically saying you're taking damage and you don't have any say about it. And it's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Some other options that are kind of flexible. Pummels, I think, are pretty flexible. They're pretty standard. Like I think almost everyone is running Pummel, and I don't think you should cut red Pummel. But there is a time where I cut red Pummel for Oldhim, and I think there will be times when people just like are kind of low on Pummel. But I still love it. Pummel, Command and Conquer. Beautiful line of play. Pulverize is a very interesting card here. It's a really big tempo swing. Really big. There's a lot of value points there, right? You're attacking for 14, but if you're getting the full -4 value there, that's an entire 18 points of value from a 10 attack. That's pretty big. Mostly there, I think it's run as a big number, but I think that's pretty relevant, and especially the Guardian Mirror. I think that's the biggest reason you would be playing Pulverize.
Yeah, and he's trying to hit with big numbers in the Guardian Mirror, right? He's not doing the... Sometimes Guardian Mirrors can be like fatigue plan, just, throw your weapon at each other back and forth. Here's my Sledge of Anvilheim, here's your Anathos, etc., etc. He's trying to do some bigger numbers. He's not just... I mean, obviously you're still going to play Sledge and still going to have turns where you're block 6, attack for 6, but he's trying to throw some, red Thunderquakes, red Pulverizes, some bigger attacks in there to actually disrupt that matchup and swing the tempo in your favor, right? Yeah, and then let's talk a little bit about these Go Again cards, right? So we saw Butcher isn't running E-Strike, but he is running the 3 Zealous Belting here, the 2 for 5 with Go Again most of the time. And then the Rousey Ancient is a 3 for 7 Go Again. Sometimes more second cycle card, but with how many big attacks he has, often a first cycle card.
Yeah, I think he can get. I think I saw him get that off first cycle once or twice.
Yeah,
and every time he played it, he definitely punched through for a lot of damage. Rousey Ancient's kind of an insane card. You kind of have to allow yourself to play certain cards like Pulverize and Red Thunderquake and Red Glacial in order to make it work pretty consistently. Because you're not Bravo. Not all of your cards have a big number on the bottom left, but really strong offensive tool. I think Zealous Belting and E-Strike are also pretty interesting. These cards, Guardians used to play these as just sort of try to hedge it into Prism. To push damage through. I think I think the same sort of strategy applies to the decks I was talking about earlier, Dromai, Dash, and Icelander, where you want to just push through big damage numbers. So you can like Zealous Belting into a hammer, could be 9 damage or even 11 damage if you're running Sledge. E-Strike allows you to do kind of similar sort of Go Again turns where you are usually choosing Go Again with E-Strike.
Yeah, so they're for those few matchups that are still pretty setup heavy, right? That's always been Guardian's problem, is setup decks. Guardian isn't the fastest deck, doesn't output the highest amount of damage per turn cycle, and so is a little weak to setup decks that set up any kind of board state, Prism or now dragons or items from Dash or Dromai. or hexes from Icelander, right? Anything that's setting up permanents,
Yep.
Guardian has a little bit of trouble into. But definitely this is the best chance Guardian's ever had into those decks, because none of them have Spectra in our stopping your whole turn cycle, right? So I think we've talked about most of the list at this point. Maybe haven't talked about, we'll get to the weapons and equipment at the end here. I think the last thing we probably haven't spoken to, we've spoken to the element cards, a lot of the red power cards, the big attacks, go again, most everything. I think we haven't spoken to some of the defensive tools. We see red staunch here, no blue staunch in Butcher's list, but red staunch, sink below, all 3 copies, and then 2 red oasis. You can see some other lists running. For example, this one has Fate for Scenes, Sink Belows, and then Oasis. Also only red staunch. And then, like, for example, a lot of people are running all 3 blue staunch, and this one's just on 1 Sink Below and no Oasis. So that, I mean, it seems like Oldhim players are not very good at agreeing on packages in general.
Yeah.
Whether it's your Earth and Ice, whether it's your power cards. These are probably the most different lists you'll ever see for a hero, right? I feel like Briar lists are maybe 5 card different. These Oldhim decks can be 15, 20 cards different sometimes. So, very drastically different. Speak to these defensive cards a little bit before we close out with the equipment.
So, Staunch Response, I think, is pretty universal right now because you expect a lot of Guardian. And Guardian Mirrors, you need your Staunch Response. It's like insane value rate. Coming in with big attacks, pretty self-explanatory. If I come in with an Oakenold and I Staunch Response it, I'm full blocking your Oakenold, and I'm also trading 1 for 1. Guardian Mirrors sort of like are coming down to where you're like, you don't want to trade multiple cards for 1 attack. If you're doing that, you can sort of start to fatigue yourself. So Staunch Response allowing you to sort of like efficiently block big attacks with just only spending 1 card out of your deck is really nice. Cards like Sink Below, Fate for Scene, every defensive deck wants to run those. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. If you want to play a more defensive controlling style strategy, you would want to run Fate for Scenes and Sink Belows. I think probably an All-Star in Oldhim, and a lot of decks should probably pick up on this card too, is Oasis Respite. I think that card is insane, especially when Oldhim. So when Oldhim's sort of taking a more defensive approach, and he's sort of on the back foot, he's going to be pitching to his Crown of Seeds a lot, and he's going to, more often than not, have 2 resources floating. And we can use one of those resources to maybe defend with a Rampart of Ram's Head, but that often leaves with 1 floating resource, and he can use that floating resource to just play a Respite. And this card is insanely versatile. Like, not only does it like efficiently block attacks, it can block wizard cards. It can block stuff like
even Rosetta Thorn, right? Just 1 card.
Rosetta Thorn.
Rosetta Thorn.
Yeah, you can choose Rosetta Thorn as the source, prevent all of the damage, and if you happen to be behind on life as well, you can get like the full 5 points of value, and that makes this card kind of insane.
Yeah,
I love Respite. It even gets around Command and Conquer as well. I'm a big fan of Respite. Yeah. There's also Brothers in Arms, sort of similar sort of ethos. Some people run it, some people don't.
Yeah, Brothers in Arms.
Defend. When you defend, you can pay 1 to give it +2, so you're kind of getting a defense reaction sort of rate where you're spending a card to defend for 4 efficiently, and usually, again, you're doing that on a turn where you've crowned. So yeah, you can use that resource that you're just going to leave floating anyway. Use that to defend with Brothers in Arms is pretty nice. One that's pretty some people are running that I haven't really seen a lot of before is can you click over, please, so I can see the card name? Because I keep on forgetting it. That is Biting Gale. Yeah, Biting Gale.
I forget this one, too, because this card is you can see, not very common. Across these lists, we've got 2 of the French lists, one running 1, one running 2, and that's it. None of the other lists are running Biting Gale out of these 6 I have pulled up. So definitely not the most common defense reaction here. Don't blame me for forgetting the name on this one.
Yeah, it's kind of like, I think it was kind of in vogue for 5 because those... sometimes sometimes the 5 decks would start the turn by pitching with their only blue, and you can kind of Biting Gale and just kind of like eat an entire card, like a red card, out of their hand, and that's really strong. But yeah, I just I'm not a huge fan of the rate
Yeah.
2 for 4 to defend with. If you fuse, it can be really disruptive, but sometimes it can just end up not really doing that much at all.
And you want fuse.
Depends on what you want to target. Yeah.
You want fuse to often be upside, not minimum, right? Like Glacial Footsteps is a good 6 for 10, and it has an upside when you fuse of getting dominate, but the 6 for 10 rate's already solid. Biting Gale is just garbage without the rate, right? Without the fuse.
Oh yeah.
So you'd rather your fuse cards be good before you fuse them, or at least average before you fuse them, and not require the fuse to even be playable. So I definitely understand. I'm not the biggest Biting Gale believer either, but I think it's cute if you ever do an Insidious Chill Golem, but I don't think you should do that. I think it's just cute.
Yeah, I mean, to think about it, like even the Oakenold is like a 3 for 7. That's on rate.
Yeah, even that's a fine rate. Yeah. And the last card, I think we've talked about almost every card in this list here. Looking at Nick Butcherds again, who won Australian Nationals. Last card we haven't is Smashing Good Time. This is just for dash, from what I understand, right? And this is just to be cute with your dominate attacks and try to remove one of their items and throw some tempo that way. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, you can hit Lexi's Amulet of Ice. It's really good.
Oh, that's true. A little Amulet of Ice. I guess it's not horrible into the ice decks like Lexi or Icelander.
But yeah, it's there for dash. You know, kind of killing a Plasma Purifier. I think most of the time you're hitting either you're probably hitting Plasma Purifier because that's what prevents you from blocking out a pistol with your Rampart.
Yeah.
But you know, you can there are times when you're gonna want to hit Chamber. It can be hard to pull off. It can be hard to confirm that on hit, but when you do get it, you can gain a lot of tempo from it. So I can see why you're running it.
Awesome. Well, so we'll close out with the weapons and equipment here. This one inputted a little weird. There is only one Winter's Wail. He was not running two-handed Winter's Wail on each hand. It just imported when I put it in here a little weird. It's also the 81st card, so don't worry about the 2 Winter's Wail. I think none of the others lists have that problem. Actually, no, I guess they all show double Winter's Wail. Oh, no, just that some of them do.
I saw early in OLDHIM's life, I saw people trying out double Winter's Wail with Time Snap Potion.
The cutest.
The cutest things. That and like Time Skippers, so you know, I could believe it.
Yeah. Yeah, but not very unlikely to be the case here. But let's talk about the suites. So I think the standard is what you actually see near the top here, with the Craterfish, Crown of Seeds, Tunic, and Ironhide legs, rocking the Winter's Wail, and then often the Rampart, right? And so would you say that's kind of the standard package, those 4 across the top with the Rampart?
So I think between Rampart and Stalagmite, in all my matchups, like in all my matches, I think I'm like 50-50 right now. So like half of my matches I use like Stalagmite, and half of my matches I use like Rampart. I think most of my matchups total I use Rampart, but like a lot of my games that I'm bringing in either shield, like my relevant matchups where I would bring a shield, it's either going to be against something like Fissurai or Phi, where I'd rather have Stalagmite. Of course, Rampart is still like a really great defensive tool against Briar, so I'd use it against that. But it's interesting. The standard is definitely Craterfist, Crown of Seeds, Tunic, and Ironhide.
And the Null Rune boots are for Rune Blades, right?
Yep.
And then you bring in the gloves against Wizards as well.
Yep.
And you have kind of pseudo Arcane Barrier 3, since Crown of Seeds can work as your third Arcane Barrier against the Wizards. Maybe a little light on Arcane Barrier here. I know sometimes you'll run a third piece of Arcane Barrier, like Heart of Ice.
If you're really worried about Icelander, you can definitely run the Heart of Ice. I will say one point about no rune boots is actually important against Dromai now, because they can just if you're not careful, they can kill you with Burn Them All.
Yeah, that
so
makes
you definitely
sense.
want the no rune boots for that now.
Yeah, good to know. Don't forget your no rune boots against Dromai. And then Rampart and Stalagmite, as you said, are pretty versatile. Rampart, a lot better when you're using all 3 resources, right? Like you said, against Rune Blades, you'll be able to use that extra resource often for your Arcane Barrier, so you can get that full value from a blue pitch usually, with Crown of Seeds, Rampart, and all Rune Boots. But against decks, especially games that can be a little fast when you're swinging at your opponent pretty often, right? Against Phi and Rhinar, like you said. Are decks that you're going to be attacking them pretty often.
Yep.
Since they kind of get around your defenses, right? Like Rhinar intimidates your hand away. Fi goes a little too wide for us to block efficiently, so you're going to actually be attacking them pretty often, and you're not going to be pitching a lot on their turn to Rampart. So you'll want Stalagmite in those matchups. Is that kind of the general rule of thumb when you're wanting to pitch less on their turn? You go more Stalagmite.
Yeah, when I want to, when I can't afford to be very defensive in a matchup, but I still need to be like disruptive, like Stalagmite can be really, really helpful. So if I'm stopping, let's say I stop one attack on average with Go again with Stalagmite, maybe that Frostbite taxes them that much. Let's say that attack on average attacks for about 4. Stalagmites on the first defense is saving me 6 points of damage, which is insane.
Yeah,
very, very, very high rate. And I can get maybe 5 points if I'm lucky on the second one as well. So like I said, Reinhardt intimidates your hand away. So if you have no cards to defend with, you'll want something, right? So you can't exactly pitch to Rampart without any cards.
Yeah. Stalagmite is it's kind of an equipment piece you need some practice with, right? Because there could be some times where you block with it maybe too early or poorly timed, and the Frostbite does effectively nothing, and it was just kind of a regular 2 block and not much else, right? So it's definitely something I recommend you all practice with and try to really time those Frostbites as well as you can. Predict what your opponent's hand is, and if that Frostbite turns off an entire card of damage, right, like a 4 points of damage on the next attack, then it's definitely getting its value, and you want to try to get that to happen. And I think the last piece to speak on here is the Sledge of Anvilheim. What are we running that card into? When are we putting down our shield and picking up our big old hammers, attacking for 6?
When attacking for 4 just won't do. So that's mostly for the mirror. I think that's the most relevant use for this tech. Specifically the Oldhim mirror. I don't love it against Bravo. Although some people do like running it against Bravo. And then also Icelander. Against Icelander, sometimes you just don't have any attacks in your hand and you want to attack for some amount of relevant damage, so you attack for 6 instead of 4, because Icelander does not care about your disruption as well. But I think the most relevant tech is Oldhim, and I think the reason for that is that Oldhim can, if you look, I kind of mentioned earlier that these decks can kind of run to fatigue, where you're sort of blocking each other out with cards. So you don't really want to spend cards to attack if your opponent can efficiently block them. But you also don't want to be coming in with an amount of damage that your opponent can efficiently block without actually spending any cards. So Oldhim's Earth React is actually a big reason why I don't think that running Winter's Wail on the mirror is a good idea. Because with an Earth React, you can prevent 2 of that damage, and if with the Crown of Seeds, you can prevent 3 of that damage without actually spending any amount of cards, and you're only taking 1.
Yeah.
Super relevant in the late game when you're running low on cards, and you need to preserve cards in deck as much as possible. With Sledge, that's not possible. They have to spend at least 1 card to block a real amount of damage there, because if they want to do that crown into Earth React thing, they can just sort of they're still taking 3 damage.
Amazing.
Much more relevant.
Yeah, and so mostly Icelander in the mirror, and then into Bravo, you're on Rampart more often.
I prefer Rampart and Winter's Wail. They're pretty close when you consider the numbers, but as far as like the kind of points of value you can get. But I think what sets Rampart honestly over the edge a little bit more against the Bravo matchup is the amount of dominate Bravo has, and sometimes like 1 point of extra block there into the dominate is what's going to prevent you from getting crushed, and that's pretty darn relevant.
Definitely.
But yeah, Sledge is pretty big for the mirror. The normal play pattern you'll see in the Oldhim mirror is Oldhim player attacks for 6, Oldhim player blocks for 6, Oldhim player attacks for 6, Oldhim player blocks for 6, and then occasionally this is broken up by by a big attack that an Oldhim player has put in their arsenal or something like that.
Gotcha. Very rhythmic gameplay. So definitely recommend Oldhim. Seems to be on top of the game right now. I'd probably say he's the strongest hero in the game right now. Now that Prism is gone, definitely a little step up from Bravo in terms of difficulty. learning a much more difficult hero ability that can be sometimes difficult to time when to use Earth Reacts or Ice Reacts or them in combination. Certainly a bit more complex than his Guardian brother, but certainly at the top of his game right now as well. Thank you for joining me. I know this is a bit of a longer video, but I really enjoy these deep dives where we can talk about all the options that a hero has right now. If you liked this video and you want more deep dive videos like this, or more videos where I'm joined by one of my team members or anyone from the community, leave a comment. Also remember to like and subscribe. Thank you, Joe, for joining us and giving us all of your OLDHIM expertise. Do you have any shout outs you want to put at the end here?
Yeah, I want to shout out bageltcg. I think you should all subscribe to bageltcg. He's a good content creator. And bageltcg.
Yeah, Shaky Leaf. Shaky Leaf you can find on Twitter is our team as well. You can find me on Twitter. You can find Joe on Twitter. We're all on the social media. Our team will be at US Nationals in our cool Shaky Leaf merch. It's going to be lots of green, so you'll be able to find the people walking around with green on them. We are the team Shaky Leaf from Jacksonville here, and I appreciate you all joining. If you want to support even further, you can hop on my Patreon. Let me know what hero you guys want to see next, and I'll see you next time.